with Secretary Clinton, who testified today on the State Department budget. She will be traveling to Egypt and Tunisia next week. She will also meet with members of Libya's opposition. The U.S. Senate in a period of morning business, general speeches, waiting for senators to come to the floor to speak. Over in the House, meanwhile, they are voting a final passage vote on a bill that would end a program for FHA mortgage assistance. You can follow that on C-SPAN tomorrow. They'll take up a similar bill. The House is in tomorrow at 9 o'clock Eastern. Later on this evening, we're going to show you the hearing held earlier today by the House Homeland Security Committee. Peter King's committee held a hearing looking at what they're calling Islamic radicalization in the U.S. It's airing now on C-SPAN 3 all the way through up till about 7 Eastern this evening. And again, we will air it all the way through beginning at 10 p.m. Eastern, and that'll be on C-SPAN.
The senator from Michigan is recognized.
Madam President, I'd ask unanimous consent that further proceedings under the quorum clause be dispensed with.
Without objection, so ordered.
Madam President, yesterday the Senate rejected two bills to provide funding for the rest of this fiscal year, and I voted against both bills, and I want to explain why and to explain what I believe is the only course open to us if we're to be serious about reducing the budget deficit. It was a victory for the American people when the Senate voted overwhelmingly to reject the spending bill sent to us by the House. House Republicans, who tell us they want to reduce the deficit, have proposed a cure that does little to cure our budget disease and does great damage to the patient in the meantime. The House bill proposed cuts in non-defense discretionary spending and in that area alone. Simple math suggests that we cannot meaningfully reduce the deficit in this manner. These programs represent less than 15% of the total budget. Not surprisingly, then, the Republican proposal would reduce our projected budget deficit this year by only a token amount. As a matter of fact, it would reduce our budget deficit this year by less than 1%. So the Republican plan fails the test of seriousness about the deficit, but it would have done significant damage to programs that Americans depend on. It would have cut more than $1 billion from Head Start. It would have eliminated early childhood education programs for more than 200,000 American children. It would have cut or eliminated Pell Grants for hundreds of thousands of college students. It would have cut $61 million from the budget request for food inspections, despite the fact that thousands of Americans every year suffer from foodborne illnesses. It would have cut $1 billion from Women's, Infant, and Children's Program, weakening a program that helps poor families put food on the table. It would have cut $180 million from the Securities and Exchange Commission budget and more than $100 million from the Commodities Futures Trading Commission budget. And those are the regulators. Those are the cops that we need on the beat to make sure that we oversee the financial markets that recently devastated our economy. It would have cut nearly $290 million from the Veterans Administration's efforts to provide better service to our veterans. The House budget would have cut $1 billion in funding for community health centers, eliminating primary care for millions of Americans. The proposal of the House of Representatives, which we soundly defeated here yesterday, would have cut $550 million from the National Science Foundation research, another $1 billion plus from Department of Energy research, almost $900 billion from our support for renewable energy sources and energy conservation, and all that would make us even more dependent than we now are on foreign oil. The Republican proposal from the House would have cut $2 billion from clean water programs. It would have put public health at risk and would have cut $250 million from the Great Lakes restoration efforts. $120 million from the President's request would have been cut, and $350 million from the 2010 level from border security efforts. Now, that's the very issue, border security, which the Republicans, including the Speaker of the House, have called their #1 priority, and yet their budget would have cut more than $350 million from the 2010 level for border security. Now, we need to make spending cuts, and I think all of us know that. We've got to reduce and remove redundancy and inefficiency in the government, and it exists. The President has proposed cuts. We need to seek more cuts, and we need to act. But the cuts that the Republicans proposed aren't about increasing efficiency. Their proposal, as Senator Manchin pointed out yesterday, quote, blindly hacks the budget with no sense of our priorities or of our values as a country. So we wisely rejected that path. We also rejected a second proposal, and I voted against that one as well. I rejected it because while it avoided the blind hacking at the budget in which the House Republicans engaged, it focused solely on cuts in non-defense discretionary spending. We had two choices yesterday, draconian cuts or more targeted cuts. But, Madam President, those are not the only two choices available to us. We can choose to seriously address our budget deficit by acknowledging that it cannot be significantly reduced until we understand that increased revenue as well as spending cuts is part of the solution. Now, how can we raise additional revenue without slowing the economy? We can end the excessive tax cuts for upper-income taxpayers that President Bush put in place. We can close tax loopholes that not only drain the Treasury but send American jobs abroad to boot. The cost to the government to continue that upper-bracket income tax cut that President Bush was able to obtain is about $30 billion a year. Ending that $30 billion tax cut, which goes to roughly 2% of Americans at the very top, those earning more than $200,000, could allow us to avoid the drastic cuts in important programs that I've mentioned and much more beside. Increasing revenue makes sense not only from a deficit reduction perspective, it is also fair. Those at the top, income-wise, have done very well as a group in recent decades, while incomes for most Americans have stagnated. To be specific, the top 1% of all income earners has more than doubled their share of total U.S. income in the last few decades, from 8.2% in 1980 to 17.7% in 2008. Meanwhile, median household income, the income of the typical American family, is now 5% lower than it was in the late 1990s. To eliminate programs that are critically important to working families while maintaining tax cuts for those whose incomes have soared would be a grave injustice. Now, there's also other revenues that we can look to if we're truly serious about deficit reduction. There are a number of tax loopholes that we can close. For example, we should not continue to give corporations a tax deduction when they send American jobs overseas. We should not allow corporations and wealthy individuals to avoid U.S. taxes by hiding assets and income in offshore tax havens. We should not allow hedge fund managers to earn enormous incomes and yet pay a lower tax rate than their secretaries pay. The American people are looking to us. They are concerned about the size of the deficit and the effect that it might have on future generations. But they also reject the notion that draconian cuts that fall hardest on working families, are the answer. And they see the wisdom and the fairness in making sure that all Americans share in the sacrifices that will be required as we seek to reduce our deficit. Now, we have an opportunity now to show the American people that we understand, too. We can craft a plan now that preserves vital programs, that makes prioritized and necessary cuts in spending, but also a plan that recognizes the need for comprehensive approaches that address revenue as well as spending. And in the coming days, Madam President, we need to adopt such a comprehensive approach. Madam President, I yield the floor.
Clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Gaga.
Madam President.
The senator from Minnesota is recognized.
Madam President, I ask that the quorum call be vitiated.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. Madam President, I'd like to tell you about a teenager. I think you know about Justin Alberg from our home state, Minnesota. Yesterday should have been Justin's 16th birthday. Justin was a kind young man, friendly and cheerful, a budding composer, but he was also the target for bullies at his high school who targeted him because he was different, because he was gay. I never had the opportunity to meet Justin. His family lost him to suicide last summer. You know that. But you and I have been privileged to meet his mother, Tammy. I've been privileged to meet her a few times. She's incredible. She's been speaking out to protect other kids. Because unfortunately, there are a lot of other kids out there struggling to get through school as they suffer from bullying, from harassment and discrimination at their public schools. 9 out of 10 LGBT students are harassed or bullied or taunted in school, and this harassment deprives them of an equal education. They are more likely to skip school, they are less likely to perform well academically, and they are more likely to drop out before they graduate from high school. And in some tragic cases like Justin's, the harassment of LGBT students can even lead to suicide. We have seen this in all too many cases all over the country because sadly this problem is so much broader than Justin. More than a third of lesbian, gay, and bisexual youth have made a suicide attempt. More than a third. That is horrifying beyond belief to me. We are failing these kids. And that is why I, along with 29 of my Senate colleagues, including presiding officer, have reintroduced the Student Non-Discrimination Act today. While federal civil rights laws prohibit discrimination on the basis of race, color, sex, religion, disability, and national origin, they do not explicitly cover sexual origin or gender identification. As a result, parents of LGBT students have limited legal recourse when schools fail to protect their children from harassment and bullying. You might be wondering why I'm mentioning bullying and discrimination in the same breath. It's simple. When a school acts to protect kids with disabilities from bullying but looks the other way when LGBT kids are harassed by their peers, that is discrimination. When school staff members participate in or encourage bullying of LGBT youth, that is discrimination. When a principal excuses a bully who torments an LGBT kid with "boys will be boys," this is discrimination. And it needs to stop. It needs to stop before more kids are hurt. The Student Non-Discrimination Act would prohibit discrimination and harassment in public schools based on sexual orientation and gender identity. It would give LGBT students similar civil rights protection against bullying and harassment as those that currently apply to students based on characteristics like race and gender. Meaningful remedies for discrimination in public schools based on sexual orientation or gender identity, modeled on Title IX's protection against discrimination and harassment based on gender. 50 years of civil rights history shows that similar laws that contain such remedies are often most effective in preventing discrimination from occurring in the first place. Like other civil rights laws, the one we introduced today would prompt schools to avoid liability by taking proactive steps to prevent the discrimination and bullying of students protected by the bill. I guarantee you that when this bill is passed, nearly every school district in the country is going to go to its lawyer and ask, how do we come into compliance? I guarantee you that the U.S. Department of Education will issue regulations, as it has under Title IX, so that schools have guidance as to how to protect these kids. The goal isn't for any school to be sued for failing to protect kids from bullying and harassment. The goal isn't for any school to come under Department of Education scrutiny. The goal is for schools to do all they can to ensure that these incidents never happen in the first place. Parents in Minnesota and across the country entrust their children to public schools with the understanding that these schools will do everything in their power to keep their children safe. When 9 in 10 LGBT kids are bullied at school, when they are 3 times more likely than straight kids to feel unsafe at school, when 1/3 of LGBT kids say they skipped a day of school in the last month because of feeling unsafe, then we know that our public education system is not fulfilling its most basic obligations to parents to keep children safe. And we have an obligation to do something about it. Yesterday, Justin Alberg from our state of Minnesota should have celebrated his 16th birthday. Should have celebrated with his family and his friends. But instead, I know his family and his friends will be missing him terribly. I knew they were yesterday, and I know they still are today. No child should have to go through the pain that Justin went through at school. No mom or dad should have to go through the heartbreaking pain that Justin's family has gone through. It's time. It's time that we extend equal rights to LGBT kids, LGBT students. We have the opportunity now, as we reform No Child Left Behind, the SEA, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, to include this legislation. Our children cannot afford for us to squander this opportunity. I urge all of my colleagues to join me today in supporting the Student Non-Discrimination Act and in demanding protection for all of our children under the law. Madam President, I ask unanimous consent that the bill's text be included in the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor and ask, suggesting absence of a quorum.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka.
And following on Senator Franken's comments, at the White House today, the President and First Lady held a bullying summit. The Associated Press writes that some 13 million students, about a third of all those attending school, are bullied every year. That's according to the White House figures. Experts say that puts them at greater risk of falling behind in their studies. Quorum call in the U.S. Senate. No more legislative work today. Earlier, they approved the nomination of Max Cogburn to be a federal judge in the Western District of North Carolina. That passed easily, 96-0. Over in the U.S. House, they've wrapped up legislative work for the week by passing a bill that would eliminate the FHA's refinance program. Tomorrow in the House, they come in at 9, and they will take up a similar bill dealing with mortgage support programs. House coverage is on C-SPAN. Later tonight over on C-SPAN at 10 o'clock Eastern, we will re-air from earlier today the House Homeland Security Committee on the extent of radicalization in the U.S. among Muslims.
Mr. President,
The Leader,
ask unanimous consent to call the quorum be terminated.
without objection.
I now move to proceed to calendar number 17, S-493.
The clerk will report.
Motion to proceed to calendar number 17 S493, a bill to reauthorize and improve the SBIR and STTR programs and for other purposes.
Mr. President, I have a cloture motion at the desk and ask it be reported.
The clerk will report.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, hereby move to bring to a close the debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 17 S493, a bill to reauthorize and improve the SBIR and STTR programs and for other purposes, signed by 17 senators as follows.
Mr. President, I ask consent the names be waived with the reading of the names. I now ask unanimous consent. Cloture vote occur immediately following the Senate's action in executive session on Monday, March 14th. Further, the mandatory quorum under Rule 22 be waived.
Without objection.
I now withdraw my motion, Mr. President.
The senator has that right.
Vice President, I'm disappointed that I had to file cloture on a bill as important as this one. We were going to have a new day here in the Senate. I just think that it's really too bad. This is a small business innovation bill. Everyone knows we have had an open amendment process here. People can offer amendments on anything they want. I think this is really suggestive of maybe something that I don't understand. Why wouldn't my Republican colleagues want us to move to a small business bill to help create jobs? We're told that 85% of all jobs in America are small business jobs. Shouldn't we be trying to help them? That's what we've been working on. We haven't been doing all of these things, these messages, cutting out programs for little boys and girls who want to learn to read, cutting Pell Grants for young men and women who are in college, cutting the ability of renewable energy projects to go forward. And all these other messages that they're sending the American people. We're here trying to create jobs. We have spent this Congress over here in the Senate on bipartisan issues, creating jobs. FAA, 280,000 jobs. We just finished, within the last few hours, the bill that will change the patent system in this country. It's needed changing for 60 years. And we've done that. And now they're blocking our going to a small business bill, another bipartisan bill. Senator Snowe, the ranking member of that committee, has worked with Senator Landrieu to move this bill forward. Who's holding up our going to this very important jobs bill? I hope the Republicans in the House are understanding what we're doing over here, creating jobs. With those two bills I've just mentioned, the patent bill and the bill dealing with Federal Aviation Administration, that's 580,000 jobs. 580,000 jobs. So I'm very disappointed that I have to file cloture on proceeding to a small business jobs bill. Mr. President, I now ask consent that the Senate proceed to a period of morning business. Senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent the Senate proceed to executive session to consider calendar number 41, that the nomination be confirmed. Motion to reconsider be laid on the table. I'm sorry, motion to reconsider be considered made and laid on the table. There be no intervening action or debate, and that no further motion be in order to the nomination, that any related statements be printed in the record, that President Obama be immediately notified of the Senate's action, and the Senate then resume the legislative session.
Without objection.
I ask unanimous consent on Monday, March 14th at 4:30 p.m. The Senate proceed to executive session to consider calendar number 10, that there be 1 hour of debate equally divided in the usual form, that upon the usually leading back of the time the Senate proceed to vote with no intervening action or debate on calendar number 10. The motion to reconsider be considered made and laid on the table with no intervening action or debate. No further motion to be in order. Any related statements be printed in the record, that the President be immediately notified of Senate's action, and the Senate then resume legislative session.
Without objection.
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that when the Senate completes the business day, it adjourn until 2 p.m. on Monday, March 14th. Following the prayer and the pledge, journal proceedings be approved today. The morning hour be deemed expired. The time for the two leaders be reserved for use later in the day. Following any leader remarks, there will be a period of morning business until 4:30 p.m. The Senators permitted to speak for up to 10 minutes each. Following morning business, Senate proceed to executive session as provided under the previous order.
Without objection.
Mr. President, Senators should expect 2 roll call votes beginning 5:30 p.m. on Monday. The first vote will be on confirmation of executive calendar number 10, nomination of James Emmanuel Boasberg of the District of Columbia to be United States District Judge for the District of Columbia. And the second vote will be on a motion to invoke cloture, the motion to proceed to calendar number 17, the Small Business Reauthorization Act. If there is no further business to come before the Senate, I ask that it adjourn under the previous order following the remarks of the Assistant Majority Leader of the Senate, Richard Durbin.
Without objection. Senator from Illinois.
Are we still in morning business?
Yes, we are.
Mr. President, I rise to speak about the issue of interchange fee reform. Last year, Congress enacted landmark reform of the swipe fees that Visa and MasterCard impose on the debit card system. An amendment I offered to Wall Street reform passed the Senate with 64 votes, 47 Democrats, 17 Republicans, and was later signed into law. It was the first amendment, I think, out of the first 26 that was held to a 60-vote standard. Every other amendment before was held to a simple majority. But I was lucky enough, when I offered my amendment, that there was an insistence that we had to reach 60 votes. We did. 47 Democrats and 17 Republicans. It was a great victory, and one that I think came as a surprise to Wall Street. Because Main Street, the retail merchants, the restaurants, the convenience stores, and many others had worked hard for this amendment. Never before had Visa and MasterCard, the duopoly of credit cards in America, and their big bank allies lost a vote like this in Congress. Normally, the card companies, credit card companies, and the big banks are used to getting their way in this town. Visa and MasterCard have such power that they control over 75% of all credit and debit card transactions in America. Last year, $1.39 trillion was transacted on Visa and MasterCard debit cards. And according to the American Bankers Association, the U.S. banking industry is a $13 trillion industry. That's trillion with a T. Many members in this body are being lobbied right now by banks and card companies to repeal this law, to undo the interchange reform that Congress passed last year. It's one of the most active lobbying efforts I've ever seen. I want to explain why interchange reform is so important, not just for the concepts of competition and transparency, but also for the people and businesses affected, for small businesses and consumers and the American economy. A little background on the debit card industry. Debit cards are simply a way for account holders to access funds that are stored in an account. They are the electronic version of a check. Debit cards are issued by banks, like Bank of America, where the account is held. The cards are also part of a card network, like Visa or MasterCard, which sets certain fees and rules about using their cards. The banks that issue the debit cards can make money in several ways. They make loans based on deposits and earn interest. They charge fees to consumers for maintaining and accessing accounts, like ATM, monthly, overdraft, and transfer fees, and they receive interchange fees from merchants every time one of their debit cards is used. If you look at any bank's website, you can find the loan interest rates and the account fees that the bank charges customers. Banks compete with one another for this consumer business. That competition keeps their fees in check. It's called the free market. But ask any bank to show you on their website where you can find the interchange fees that the bank charges merchants, restaurants, universities, charities, convenience stores, and the list goes on. Ask them what they charge as an interchange fee for the use of their debit cards. The bank will say, well, you'll have to call Visa or MasterCard. That's right. Card companies like Visa fix the interchange fee rates that are received by the issuing banks, the banks that have their name on the card next to the Visa symbol. In other words, thousands of banks that compete with one another in all other aspects of business do not compete with one another when it comes to how much they pay in so-called swipe fees or interchange fees they get from merchants. The banks just let Visa set the prices for all of them. Visa has decided that every bank that issues Visa cards will get the same rate as every other bank, no matter how efficient a bank is, no matter how much fraud a bank allows. Rather than a competitive system, this is a system which subsidizes inefficiency. In fact, the only competition in the interchange system right now is the competition between card networks to raise interchange fees. They raise the rates in order to get banks to join the network and issue more of their cards. Now, it's easy to see why banks and card networks set up this system. It makes the banks happy because they get billions of dollars a year in high fees, and they don't have to worry about competition. It makes the networks happy because they get their own network fee each time a card is swiped, and high interchange means banks will issue more cards. But it's unfair to those who are receiving the cards, for example, the restaurants, the merchants, the shops, the bookstores, universities, charities, the convenience stores, because they have no power to negotiate this fee. They can't hold off and say, wait a minute, if you want us to take Visa at our store, we want to know how much you're going to charge us every time a customer uses a Visa card. No way to have any conversation in that. Visa and the bank establish what that will be, the swipe fee, the interchange fee. It's unfair to consumers, particularly low-income and consumers without banking accounts, who pay billions per year in hidden interchange fees that are passed on to them in higher prices for gas and groceries. How about that? I had some people in my office today talking about the price of gasoline, and they said, understand, every time a customer uses a Visa or MasterCard, that they're taking a percentage of that cost on the gallon of gasoline, and in order to have a profit to keep the lights on, their percentage keeps going up. We have to keep raising the price of gasoline to keep up with the credit card companies, let alone the national oil companies. The Federal Reserve estimated that in 2009, about $16.2 billion was charged in debit interchange fees. Over $16 billion in 2009 in interchange fees. It's a massive amount of money that's being paid to the banks by merchants and their customers, about $1.3 billion a month. I'm going to get back to that number in a moment. It didn't used to be that way in America. It isn't that way in many other countries that use Visa and MasterCard. Back when the debit card system got started several decades ago, debit interchange fees were minimal. The system worked just fine. It wasn't until Visa entered the market in the 1990s we started seeing debit card interchange fees that look like credit card interchange fees. Two different worlds here. When I use a credit card, ultimately the bank and credit card company have to collect from me. If I dodge them or don't pay, there's a loss. A debit card comes directly out of my account. There's no question where the money is there. It's already there. There's an excellent New York Times article by Andrew Martin from last year titled, How Visa Using Card Fees Dominates a Market. I'd like unanimous consent to insert that article in the record at this spot.
Without objection.
I urge my colleagues to read it. It shows how Visa leveraged its dominance in the credit card industry to enter into and dominate the debit card industry. Visa then changed the debit interchange fee so that it looked like the credit card fee. The result? The U.S. has the highest interchange fees in the world. We also have some of the worst fraud prevention technology in the world. This is because Visa gives banks higher interchange rates for so-called signature debit transactions instead of PIN debit transactions. So the banks tell their customers to pay with signature debit even though far less fraud occurs with the use of PIN numbers. It doesn't have to be this way. Many countries like Canada have thriving debit card systems with zero interchange fees. Zero. Canada has low fraud and wide consumer debit usage. Other places like the European Union carefully regulate interchange rates to keep them to a reasonable level. But in this country, we have let dominant card networks, and they are a powerful bunch, take over our debit card system. And they're driving that system on an unsustainable course. I've worked for years to reform interchange fees and to bring transparency, competition, and choice to the credit card and debit card industry. I first introduced this bill in 2008, 2009, joining with Senator Kit Bond of Missouri to file a modest floor amendment to the Credit Card Act. The amendment simply said that interchange fees should be reported to the Federal Reserve and that Visa and MasterCard shouldn't be allowed to stop merchants from offering discounts for debit cards against credit cards. The card companies and bank industry hated that idea like the devil hates holy water. They did everything they could to kill the amendment. They used their standard talking points, saying this amendment would hurt consumers, small banks, credit unions, the economy, everything you can think of. The amendment never reached a vote. Instead, in 2009, the banks and card companies said they would support a study. Oh, we love to study things in Washington. So Congress delayed real reform and said, let's get on with the study. Well, last year I said enough's enough. I said we can't continue to let Visa, MasterCard, and the big banks use their price-setting schemes to turn our debit card system into their own little piggy banks, not so little, large piggy banks, at the expense of merchants and consumers. The amendment I offered last year said if banks are going to let a card network set interchange rates for them, those rates must be reasonable and proportional to the cost of processing a debit transaction over that network's wires. Now, why in the world would we bring the Federal Reserve in to establish a reasonable and proportional interchange fee? Because there is no competition in this market. Visa and MasterCard, recently under investigation by the Department of Justice for a little too cozy relationship, Visa and MasterCard establish what these interchange fees are going to be. They impose them on the merchants, who many times are told late in the game how much the fee is. They don't bargain them. They can't shop. There's no competition when it comes to the establishing of interchange fees. This will end this inefficient subsidy that Visa and MasterCard have created for their banks, and it will incentivize banks to operate their card systems efficiently. The amendment directed the Fed to issue regulations to implement this reasonable, proportional standard. The Fed issued draft regulations in December and is now working on final regulations to be completed in April and take effect in July. You know what they found, Mr. President? Their initial cut at this, the average interchange fee is in the range of 40 cents, and the average cost to use a debit card is about 10 cents. Think of the overcharge that's going on with every single transaction. The next time you're standing in the airport and somebody hands a debit card to the cashier to pay for a pack of gum, think about that retailer just having lost money. The only one who made money in the transaction was Visa, MasterCard, or the issuing bank. Last year, when I was drafting this amendment, I knew we had to be careful about the way the reform would affect small banks and credit unions that currently benefit from the rates that Visa and MasterCard set. I didn't want to drive those small issuers out of the debit card market, so my amendment specifically exempted them from regulation. That means that now, just like before, networks will compete by raising interchange rates to win the business of those small, unregulated issuers. I know the small banks and credit unions are also lobbying on the Hill, saying that interchange reform will hurt them. For years, they have been making this argument against any type of reform. Mr. President, I've been on the Hill for a while, in the House and in the Senate. I used to really believe there was a qualitative, not just quantitative, but a qualitative difference between community banks and credit unions and the big boys, the Wall Street banks. Over the years, I'm sorry to say, when it comes to these issues, they're the same. It's just a quantitative difference. Credit unions that I'm talking about here, community banks, are smaller, but in terms of the way they look at issues, not a dime's worth of difference. And when it comes to this issue, there's an interesting phenomena at work. Visa and MasterCard don't dare raise their head on Capitol Hill. If there are two more unpopular companies with American consumers, it's hard to think of what they might be. Maybe today it's oil companies, but it's close second with credit card companies and the way they treat people. So they don't come in and lobby. Well, how about the Wall Street banks? You think they're going to show up here and say, you can't regulate these interchange fees? Two-thirds of the debit cards come off of the biggest banks out of Wall Street, not the community banks and credit unions. So the big money in this whole transaction is on Wall Street. But you don't hear from the Wall Street banks. Why? Because they're not going to win any popularity contests either. Wasn't that long ago we were shoveling billions of taxpayers' dollars at these banks to keep the lights on after they'd made some pretty stupid investment decisions that drove our economy into the ditch. So they can't lobby, the big banks with the big money involved in this issue. The credit card companies can't lobby because they have no popularity with the American consumer. So what do? They have some beards. And the beards in these circumstances are the credit unions and the community banks. Those specifically exempted are now coming to Congress, coming to Capitol Hill, saying this could hurt us in the future. We drew a line and said if the asset value of the financial institution is below $10 billion, they're not affected by this law. There are, if I recall, only 3 credit unions in America with assets over $10 billion. The vast majority, overwhelming majority of credit unions in this country don't have anywhere near that kind of asset value. And the same thing's true with community banks. And so, Wall Street banks, credit card companies have found their great agents. Their agents are the credit unions, community banks, presenting their case to the members of Congress as if they are directly regulated when they are specifically exempted from this. I know the small banks and credit unions are working the Hill. For years, they've been using these arguments against any type of reform. When we tried to get bankruptcy reform to deal with foreclosure a few years back, and I honestly think it could have had a dramatically positive impact to slow down foreclosures in this nation, we specifically exempted credit unions and community banks, and they still lobbied against it. They are in concert when it comes to issues with the biggest banks in America. I don't understand it. It is a dramatic departure from where they have been historically. Independent analysts agree that the reform Congress passed last year will give small banks actually competitive advantages over big banks. I'd like to insert in the record a recent op-ed by Andrew Carr in the American Banker newspaper entitled, "Never Mind the Lobbyists, Durbin Amendment Helps Small Banks." With your consent, I'd like to enter it in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now, Carr's no mouthpiece for merchants. He's a financial consultant who's recognized as a creator of many aspects of the modern card industry. But he says what I've been saying for months. The arguments small banks have been making against my amendment defy economic logic and common sense. I also believe that interchange reform is essential for consumers. Banks will tell you consumers will be hurt by reform because banks will have to raise consumer fees to make up for lost revenue. First of all, when did we start listening to banks and credit card companies to tell us what's good for consumers? Second, read the headlines for the past few years, and you'll see that banks were raising consumer fees to record highs in 2008, 2009, and 2010 before my amendment became law. They're always looking for ways to raise fees on consumers as high as the market will allow. Third, consumers are already paying for the current interchange system. Soaring interchange fees are passed on to consumers in the form of higher prices for gasoline and groceries, and the current system particularly hurts unbanked customers who pay with cash. I believe that consumers benefit from transparency, competition, and choice. The current interchange system has been designed specifically to avoid these features. That's why consumer groups agree with me and support the interchange reform which we have on the books. I know the financial industry lobbyists are out there now storming the halls of Congress. They're saying let's delay the interchange Fed's rulemaking for a year or two. Let's study the issue some more. Study, study, study. This is one great study hall, this United States Senate. But there comes a point when we need to act. And we are prepared to act now with the Federal Reserve in April and in July. There's no need to delay these rules. Read the comments I submitted to the Fed about their draft rulemaking. You'll see how the new law provides reasonable time frames for implementing every part of the Fed's rules. I saw this call for delay and study before on the Credit Card Act back in 2009, and it doesn't surprise me that we're hearing it again. If my colleagues remember nothing else, they should remember this. Delaying interchange reform will have significant consequences to employers, small businesses, consumers all across America. Not only will businesses, universities, government agencies, and charities keep paying the current $1.3 billion per month in debit interchange fees, the fees will keep going up further. There will be nothing to constrain Visa and MasterCard from setting higher and higher fees. There is no competition in this industry. Some of my colleagues say they're concerned about small banks and consumers. So am I, and that's why I drafted the amendment to exempt them. Independent analysts and consumer groups agree that the reform we passed protects small banks and consumers. I say to my colleagues, don't tell me you're worried about small banks and consumers and then push for a delay that will serve to provide $1 billion a month in more fees, primarily to the largest banks in America. A delay in this implementation would give Visa and MasterCard and the big banks a multi-billion-dollar handout. Have we heard this song before? While leaving merchants and consumers worse off than they already are. I'm not going to sit by and let the big banks and card companies get away with trying to kill this reform. They've been bailed out enough already. I urge my colleagues in Congress, don't bail out the big banks on Wall Street another time. Once in a political lifetime is enough for most of us. I'm standing with the consumers and merchants on this issue, and I hope my colleagues will join me and find it's a good place to stand. I yield the floor and I don't suggest anything, Mr. President.